I'm about to make a bold claim right now, people. I'm going to be very confident when I say this, man. If there was a horror director out here, or a director in general, because this man has done movies that are outside of the horror genre. He was just not a one-trick pony. Even though people wanted him to be, he was not. But if there was a director, a writer-director, who was the Tupac Shakur of this shit, of posthumous news and releases, it's fucking George A. Romero. He is the Tupac Shakur of the genre of directing, whatever, because even in death, this man's name is still ringing bells, man. For better or worse, this man is going to be around forever. Is one of the reasons, one of the single reasons, man, that I am able to do what I do today, man. Night of the Living Dead. I've said this time after time after time. I never get tired of saying it. That movie is the reason why I not became, because I believe I was born this way, but I found my calling as a writer, man. Not so much a podcaster. I didn't know I wanted to be that until later on in life when I got a lot older. But me finding my calling as a writer and really grabbing the horns of this shit and just going crazy with it and just being imaginative with it and just realizing you can create whatever you want on paper and film it and all that shit, man. Night of the Living Dead is the reason behind that, man. George A. Romero is the reason behind that. He's the GOAT. People already know how I feel about this guy, man. Like when George A. Romero passed away, what was it, 2016? Was it 2017? I'm not sure exactly. But rest in peace, shout out to the GOAT, man. When I saw the notification on my phone pop up that George A. Romero passed away, I went home and cried, y'all. No bullshit. And no shame in me saying this shit, man. I was in my feelings. It was a dark day. I was like, wait, he can't die? You know, the guy who made movies about the undead and, Creep Show and Dark Half and things like that. I said, he can't go. Nah, this has got to be a joke. But no, it wasn't, man. And, the genre needs George A. Romero, especially the state that the world is in right now. He was going to say some shit in his movies, man. He was one of the first guys that I experienced social commentary on screen with. And I didn't really understand a lot of the themes that he was putting forth in Night of the Living Dead. Dawn of the Dead. Dawn of the Dead is consumerism at its finest, man, at its peak. That was 1978. And it was the consumerism theme was just so amazing. That was just wrapped up in this in these zombie movies, man. Even Day of the Dead and Land of the Dead, man, resonated during like when it was like election year and all that other shit. Land of the Dead was crazy because Kaufman, Dennis Hopper's character he's Trump. He's Donald Trump. I don't give a shit, man. That's Trump right there. I don't know if George A. Romero was predicting the future, but the man has always been ahead of the curve here, man. Now, as far as the social commentary in Diary of the Dead, while I don't really care for that movie, social commentary was definitely there. And George A. Romero even does a cameo in one of those scenes in that movie where he's playing like this military guy who's, basically cleaning up what they, he's like, yeah, everything's okay, nothing to see here. He's basically doing the Officer Barbrady shit on national television. And the guy that's holding the camera throughout the entire movie or the majority of the movie in Diary of the Dead, he's like, yo, they deleted the footage. They edited the footage to make it seem like nothing really happened. That, that these motherfucking zombies ain't really coming back. TV cover up and TV conspiracy theories and media frenzies, mass hysteria that they talked about in the first movie. You know what I'm saying? Survival of the Dead, I'm not gonna hold y'all. It's one of those movies I cannot do it. I don't like it. It is complete left field in comparison to what the other movies were. Now, I know that George A. Romero didn't really look at his movies as sequels, as he said in the interview. He looked at his films as like standalone type of things. Like you want to be able to watch Night of the Living Dead and believe that is like that act is very final at the end of it. You want to be able to watch Dawn of the Dead and be like, wow, this isn't really connected to Night of the Living Dead at all. It stands on its own, but in this world that they've created, the zombies they grow in numbers and they learn to communicate, which was hinted at in Night of the Living Dead. I don't know if he knew it, but that cemetery zombie picking up that brick and breaking Barbara's window, that was a sign that these motherfuckers aren't stupid. They're shambling around, yeah, but they're not stupid. They're using weapons to get what they need to get and get their food. And they even did that, you know, when they took the power out in the house when they're breaking in at the end of the original movie, and you know they pick up table legs and they pick up bricks and rocks to bash through the doors and the windows and shit. Land of the Dead was foreshadowed in 1968, man. I don't know if he knew it or not, but it was. But I like Survival of the Dead is it's just a bad film for me, man. It's very hard to watch. The dialogue is cringe. The acting is terrible in that movie, man. And the zombie bits, like it's like they took some of the CG from Land of the Dead and just made it look like worse. Like there's bad green screen. Some of the zombie hits and the gore is CG in there, and it's like the concept's a little weird, but I like maybe it could have worked. I'm not sure, man, but I'm not a fan of that movie. You know, I did an episode years ago where I think this is when I first started this, man, like 3 years ago, when I was talking about how, you know, George A. Romero's Dead Saga, it never really got the credit it deserved, and if it doesn't, I understand why, in the sense that I know for me, I'm making a really long segue right now. People, trust me, I'm getting into the news here. But for me, like as the movies went on, after Dawn of the Dead, I was never emotionally invested in any of those characters. Not in Day of the Dead, not in Land of the Dead, Diary, Survival. Like it just took this particular toll with the characters for me, where I didn't really. I'm watching it for the zombies. Now, Day of the Dead is a masterpiece for sure, underrated masterpiece. But I don't have an emotional attachment to any of those characters. Not even Terry Alexander. I always like to latch on to the token black guy because I'm like, okay, what are you gonna do? Because I'm putting myself in your shoes. If anything, if you're the only black guy in the situation, and while I love his characters, there's no emotional investment that I've got there, man. And it just happens as his movies go along. I know after Survival of the Dead, he was going to make Road of the Dead, and it was going to be like kind of like this Mad Max demolition derby shit where the zombies were driving these cars, I believe. Nah. I remember when they announced that, I had put a post up and I'm like, listen, y'all know how I feel about this guy, man. I was heartbroken with everything that happened, but the fact that he wanted to make that movie, I'm like, that would not have been a good idea. I think that would have just completely been taking this shit and just, you know, you're going like how people say Fast and Furious gets crazier and wilder every time. That's the direction this was going in. So Road of the Dead, I was not crazy about. Now, the title I'm about to say to y'all right now about this news here. This may sound familiar to a lot of y'all out there, especially like during the days of like upcomingmovies.com, AOL dial-up, because I know this is where I was looking for the script for this movie, man. I never found it, but there were little hints of it online. And you know, I'm talking about Twilight of the Dead, man. If that sounds familiar, that was the movie that George A. Romero had planned to do after Day of the Dead, because there was a lot of shit that he wanted to do in Day of the Dead, but I don't think it was like budgetary constraints. I don't think they gave him the money to do what he wanted to do. I think there was supposed to be like this above ground battle with the humans and the zombies, and that sounds cool, but I like Day of the Dead for taking a bit more claustrophobic approach like the first movie did. You know, Dawn of the Dead was basically open map, you know what I'm saying? It was Grand Theft Zombie, basically. You could have anywhere to fucking run to, anywhere to hide. Day of the Dead is way more claustrophobic because you're underground in this missile silo. Yeah, there's limited places to run, but the walls close in at some point when those zombies break in, or when Miguel lets him in on that elevator. So Twilight of the Dead was going to be George A. Romero's fourth movie back in the day, where he got to do all the things that he didn't get to do in Day of the Dead and more. And then it went from Twilight of the Dead. There's even a mention of Twilight of the Dead. How fucking disrespectful are you niggas to mention Twilight of the Dead in a movie like House of the Dead? There's a character that's like, those are reanimated corpses like out of a Romero movie. And he's like, yeah, Romero, like the Holy Trilogy, Night, Dawn, and Day. They said he was going to make Twilight of the Dead one day, but I highly doubt it. And it's like, did y'all throw that in there to just utter his name in the movie, or to just throw shade at him? Like, fuck that movie for even. Y'all even had the cojones. Don't even put, Twilight of the Dead and George A. Romero in the same fucking context of that shitty ass House of the Dead movie. That was not even gonna go there. This is like 2 episodes I've talked about him in like the last hour or so. But Twilight of the Dead went on to become Dead Reckoning. And Dead Reckoning was this another script that I had looked for online back in the day, and I didn't get much of that. But there was, like I said, snippets of it. There was snippets of the character development, notes, and what the Dead Reckoning was actually the name of the movie, but it was going to be the name of the truck, which it was. In Land of the Dead, they ended up naming the big armored truck Dead Reckoning, but it was supposed to be the size of like 10 city buses or some shit like that was written in the script. But there was a lot of ideas that were going on about what Dead Reckoning or Twilight of the Dead was going to be. And then it kind of just went under the rug, and we got Land of the Dead, which I actually have a lot of love for. I love that movie because it's like pre-Walking Dead. They were going on scavenge runs, and they had these classes of people who had been, it was the rich and the poor. You had the soldiers, but you had classes of people that were like sanctioned off from, Fiddler's Green. Fiddler's Green was basically the fucking Trump Towers. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, hence me saying that Dennis Hopper's character in that movie was the Donald Trump of all of that shit. But Twilight of the Dead, man, I'm mentioning this now because they're saying, this is where we at. Collider said today that George A. Romero's Twilight of the Dead script is complete. Now, while, as a writer, that definitely gives me the warm fuzzies to know that, when you have put the end at the end of a story or script or whatever, however y'all close it out, it's a special moment, man. I miss moments like that. That's one of the reasons I'm about to get back into screenwriting and just story writing in general. It's the creative process, but also when you finish it and you look down at that beauty, even though the first draft might be a piece of shit, it's your piece of shit. You look down at it and it's like, yo, I did that. Like, I created that. That's a magical moment, man, when you write the end and the script is finished. I love it. But on the flip side of that coin, there's a part of me that's like, okay, I'll believe it when I see it. Now, granted, there is a strike going on, so nothing's really going to go into production at this point. But there is news that this is going to, it says the posthumous film from the legendary horror filmmaker is tentatively scheduled to begin production this year. Now, this year could mean anything. It could mean, before midnight on New Year's Eve. They could mean that, and they could be like, well, technically we started this year. We don't know how long the strike and the circumstances. We don't know of all that shit right now, but this is what they're reporting here. And there's like 3 points that they make under the headline here to say George A. Romero's final zombie movie, Twilight of the Dead, is finally in the works with the collaboration of the Romero estate and LA-based financier producer Roundtable. I've never heard of them, but the fact that the George A. Romero estate is handling this, I feel like that's the classiest thing to do. I feel like that's the proper thing to do. Because you want the people who were in close proximity with him the most outside of, the people that he worked with, you want them to have hands in it, man. It's one of the reasons why, while there's the selfish part of me, you can't wait to see Freddy Krueger on screen again. I understand why Wes Craven's estate is taking their sweet ass time and not rushing any old Nightmare on Elm Street property out there. We tried that shit in 2010, and that's what we got. I'm not saying no, you did anything wrong, Samuel Bayer. You just made a shit movie. I don't know if it was Michael Bay or New Line in his ear or whatever, Platinum Dunes, I don't know, but that movie sucked. So I can understand why Wes Craven's estate is, just being very careful about this whole situation. Now, the second point that they make to say here, it says the movie will serve as the conclusion to the Living Dead franchise, exploring the dark nature of a humanity through the perspective of the remaining humans in a world overrun by the undead. That it sounds cool. I'm not gonna lie to y'all, man. With the way that the last couple Dead movies turned out, I'm very much on the fence about this. I'm excited because anything George A. Romero's name is attached to, I like to give a chance. Especially his stuff outside of the horror genre, man. I went back a couple years ago and watched Night Riders for the first time. That's in George A. Romero's top 5 films, man. That's one of my favorite movies. There's Always Vanilla. I haven't seen Season of the Witch or The Amusement Park yet, but I want to go back and watch Martin and The Crazies. I haven't seen those movies in a while. I don't think I've even seen the original Crazies movies. But, movies where he, stepped outside of his comfort zone, man, those are interesting ones. But the way those last movies turned out, it's like, all right, man, I hope this is I hope it's good. I hope it's good, man. The world obviously has got to be overrun at this point. It's got to be worse than Land of the Dead. Diary of the Dead doesn't really count as far as the continuity I'm about to talk about because it served as like a reboot, like a prequel type of thing. They went back to the first night when all the shit hit the fan. But Land of the Dead and Survival of the Dead, these fuckers have to be, like strays out there, like bugs. Like y'all, I don't know how many of y'all have seen Jurassic World Dominion, but the opening sequence is basically the Mosasaurus is in the ocean, the fucking pterodactyls or the pterodons, whatever they're called, they are they made a nest on top of a skyscraper. These motherfuckers are running around like wild animals, like it's just regular out there. I feel like that's what you have to do with the zombies, man. You got to take what they did in Land of the Dead and just expand on that. As far as the conclusion goes, I'm like, yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with this being the last one. This is let's see, 1 2 3 4 5 6. This will be the seventh one. Hopefully this is a lucky number 7 here. And they say they're going to explore the dark nature of humanity, which is cool. That's one thing I want to see. This is where we get into Walking Dead territory here. One of the when you say the dark nature of humanity, it makes me think of Walking Dead because it makes me look at how fucked up we are as humans in the midst of of terror. One of the things that has always been amazing about the first Night of the Living Dead movie, and it does this applies to a couple of the other sequels, but one of the things that's always been fucking amazing about the first Night of the Living Dead movie is the fact that it's not even really the zombies. The zombies aren't the threat. We, as a society, are the threat to one another. We can't even coexist in these zombie situations. We can't even coexist as civil human beings long enough to fucking survive one night. I feel like had everybody in that first movie, band together and work together and put their egos aside and just weren't fucking stupid like Tom and Judy, things like that, they would have survived with no problem. Teamwork, making the dream work. In Dawn of the Dead, our core 4, the original core 4 in my eyes, pre-Scream 6, they stuck together up until when the looters came. They were surviving. They made it home sweet hell up in there. Up in that mall, man. They were living the life. They cleaned house. They got the fucking dead zombies out of there. They blocked the entrances off. All was well until you had a group of looters who ran and ransacked their entire safe haven, man. Then Day of the Dead, you get to that, and none of these motherfuckers got along with each other. Even the soldiers had conflict in between them, and even the core 3 characters. I think it was Laurie Cardille, Jarlath Conroy, and Terry Alexander. They had their differences with them too. It's like it's the human conflict in these zombie movies that's really the fucking problem, man. So if we're going to explore the dark nature of humanity, yeah, this is where we get into Walking Dead territory, where you might go on a scavenge run and come across a group of people who may want to just kill you just because. If you got a woman with you, they might want to rape her or kill her just because. Like, you got to get to. I'm not saying they should go to that extreme in particular, but this is the type of shit you got to showcase. If we are this deep into the zombie apocalypse, man, we can't make it. We can't do Resident Evil Afterlife where everybody's got hairstylists and barbers and personal personal clothing designers and shit. These were the freshest motherfuckers I've ever seen in a zombie apocalypse in Resident Evil Afterlife. It's not realistic. Yeah, you got people that are from different walks of life that want to band together. You got somebody that's going to turn on somebody at some point and fuck up the whole plan. It's going to happen. I feel like that's one of the cliches of zombie movies that you have to have happen, because depending on how you play it out in each movie, it'll never grow old, man. It'll never grow stale. I feel like let's get crazy with these humans. I feel like if we've got human drama with our main characters, and sometimes they're unlikable, cool, but we've got to have another group of motherfuckers that we can't stand. We got to want to see them, the seemingly good ones, we got to want to see them triumph, and we got to want to see the bad motherfuckers either get killed by them or eaten by the zombies. I prefer to get them eaten by zombies, because the way that they got their asses handed to them, those soldiers in Day of the Dead, those are some of the most shocking and just gruesome deaths in any zombie movie. And shout out to Tom Savini, because he killed those effects in that movie. Now, the third thing here that they say before we get into this, and I say my little my little piece before we wrap this up, man. It says the production team is actively seeking a director and considering potential cast members to bring the vision of a thought-provoking socio-political commentary to life. Okay, now as far as a director, George A. Romero's not here. I don't know anybody else that could do this. I just got finished talking about Christopher Landon possibly directing a Scream movie after Radio Silence did it. And I was always talking about, man, I said that I was always talking about, let me get my words together here, people. I was mentioning how I'm always talking about how I want my franchises to have their identities and have consistency with the same director, but that's not realistic. In this case, it's definitely not realistic because, like the Scream franchise, this creator who, paved the way for this series to still be alive and well, he's no longer with us. I have no idea who would be the second in command. The first person that came to mind, though, just now, is Tom Savini. And I go back to what I was saying about the Scream franchise. The next man up mentality. I love that they've got Kevin Williamson loosely involved in the making of these last two Scream movies, because that was Wes Craven's right hand man. So of course you want your right hand man to oversee the project. That's decent. But Tom Savini, he came to mind just now because Tom Savini was supposed to do the special effects in Night of the Living Dead, the original, and I think he said he ended up going to the military and becoming like a photographer or something like that. So he did the effects for Dawn of the Dead. He did the effects for Day of the Dead, a couple other Romero movies pre 1990, and then smack dead in 1990, George A. Romero gave him the keys to the car and said, "Listen, you can direct this remake of Night of the Living Dead, and we can make some money off of this shit that we missed out on the first time around." And that is, again, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, this is one of the best gestures I've ever seen in the industry, in the entertainment industry, man, because to get the keys to that car must have been everything to Tom Savini. He must have been like a kid in a candy store making that Night of the Living Dead movie. And I feel like it'd be a testament to their friendship, like their brotherhood, man, if Tom Savini stepped on board to direct this movie. I'm not sure if I don't know, man. There's so much shit going on with properties that are attached to George A. Romero. This is not the only one, man. And while I do I'm reserved about a lot of shit here because I don't know how this is going to play out now that he's not around. And I'm reserved about this because I know how the last two movies played out when he was around. He directed them. And listen, I'm not even being disrespectful. And I was just telling my girl the same thing today. I said, I'm a fan, like my goats, I'm a fan of them so much so that I know when they can do better. I would be the ultimate fanboy that just took any old thing if I didn't say, okay, it was okay, but I know that this movie could have been better because of X, Y, and Z. And that's just me being a movie buff, man. I'm no fucking, Siskel or Ebert, or Roper for that matter. But I'm just saying, like, as somebody that loves movies and somebody that's trying to break into that, that field, I have to give criticisms, man, and I feel like if George A. Romero was to be around to direct this, I still would be like, all right, man, like, can we please make it better than the last two? Like, please, can we make this better than the last two? But now that he's not here, like, if it's not Tom Savini, I'm looking at it like, I don't know, man. Like, we've already got Night of the Living Dead 2 coming out, man, with all three Day of the Dead survivors reprising their roles, man. Jarlath Conroy, Laurie Cardille, and Terry Alexander came back, man. There's a website for it. There's an Instagram page for it. And there's set photos. There's a couple set photos. David Howard Thornton is in Night of the Living Dead 2. And it does take place after the events of Day of the Dead, where that island that they were on at the end of the movie, they're still there, and there's zombies washing ashore. I don't know if these motherfuckers learned how to swim, but this movie, I've been waiting, since they announced it. They announced Night of the Living Dead 2, which is a very strange fucking title. You could have just called it something of the dead. I don't know, like Sunrise of the, whatever. But it's a strange title. But I remember when they announced it, it's a black and white video of the three survivors from Day of the Dead. All of them got their weapon of choice. They're all covered in blood for the most part. They either covered in blood, or I remember them looking pretty fucked up. But they've got their weapons like in a down and ready stance, man. They ready to whoop ass. But the music they're playing in the background is that weird like synth. I don't know if it's a synthesizer that they like fucked around with, but the music that's playing or sound effects when the zombies are eating Tom and Judy in the original 1968 movie. Now, I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about. Please go back and just watch that scene. That is the music that's playing, and I'm like, bet. When do we get it? I've been wondering what happened to these survivors, man. But that's coming out. We've got a direct sequel to Night of the Living Dead coming out, man. There's a black director and a black writer, black female directors and writers, man. They were a part of I want to say one of the Walking Dead series they were a part of, but she's doing a direct sequel to the original Night of the Living Dead, and I am more than intrigued. Am I concerned? Absolutely, yeah. I know the original movie still exists, but when you decide to, you tread them waters and you do a direct sequel to Night of the Living Dead, which I think could be pulled off. I don't know if they're gonna have Judith O'Dea come back, which would be very interesting, but I don't know. Is it going to be what happened directly after, like Halloween 2 style, or are we doing Halloween 2018 where it's been years later? I'm cool with either one, but I would much rather see what happens. Do a period piece, 1968. Do what happens right after the militia burn Ben's body. Like, do they get shot down by another militia? I have no idea what's going on, but like, people, as far as this Twilight of the Dead coming out, man, I am concerned, but I am curious too. I don't know if my curiosity outweighs my concern here. I feel like only time will tell, but I'm very particular about, my George A. Romero zombie shit. Now, granted, nothing, Night of the Living Dead is the greatest movie of all time. Greatest movie of all time, zombie movie of all time, horror movie of all time. It's the GOAT over everything. Any day of the week for me. So that's a bar that's been set. There hasn't been a movie to dethrone that ever, and I don't think there ever will be. But Dawn of the Dead is another bar that was set so high, man, because there hasn't in a zombie movie, I don't think there's an emotional attachment like the one I have to those characters, man. Not even Return of the Living Dead and Return of the Living Dead 3, which I love. I just watched Return of the Living Dead last night, but I'm very weird about the I want to say, like, I'm protective over those first two. The first three especially, and I do love Land of the Dead. The last two, like I said, I feel how I feel about them. But it's just like, all right, man, if you're going to cap this off, this has to have a little sprinkle of every movie that's come before it. Every movie in the Dead saga, we've got to have a little bit of fan service from each one. But this has to, like all the other movies have been, for better and worse, they have to stand on their own and be different and introduce something different that the other movies haven't, that we haven't seen, man. And they do that, man. One of the things that I can give Diary of the Dead and Survival of the Dead credit for, while I don't particularly like those films, they give us shit that we haven't seen before. I think Survival of the Dead, there were like two islands of these families, or these two groups of families, and I think they were trying to find a cure and save their loved ones and shit like that. And you also, it's like George A. Romero broke his own rule, man, where he's like, well, these aren't really sequels per se, they're just, these movies stand on their own. But yet you got Joe Pilato in Dawn of the Dead as a cop, and then he's a soldier in Day of the Dead, and then you've got the cop who played the guy who played Brubaker in Land of the Dead. Now Brubaker turned into a zombie. What's his name? God damn it, I can't remember fucking dude's name in Land of the Dead. What's his name? Riley Denbo. Yep, he kills Brubaker, but Brubaker pops up in Diary of the Dead, which makes sense because it's a prequel. But then you flash forward to Survival of the Dead, and I guess they tie it in. Yeah, they do. They tie it in because they show the footage of when Brubaker, or not, whatever, that actor. They show the footage from that actor from Diary of the Dead at some point in the beginning of Survival of the Dead. But you got these reoccurring characters for movies that aren't sequels per se. But it's cool, man. I want this to be great, but it's because it's George A. Romero, because it's in the Dead saga. because of how the last two movies played out for me, I can't help but be concerned. Excuse me. But I'm gonna give this a chance, man. I'm gonna give this a chance, and I feel like if this is not a great film overall, then cool. I've got 3, 4 at best. Because Land of the Dead, I've got a lot of problems with that movie. I think it was almost too much money in that budget to be used, man, because it's CG gore, it's green screen, and all types of There's a zombie in Land of the Dead whose head is gone, but it's still very much attached by his spine, so he like jerks his body forward to flip his head onto somebody's arm and bite it off. It's a bad effect. Fucking dope ass idea on paper, and I'm pretty sure the storyboards looked amazing. But that shit, it was too much goddamn money they gave George A. Romero for Land of the Dead. I would have much rather loved, but you know, granted, the things he wanted to do that he couldn't do, like I said, in Day of the Dead, he wanted to pull off with this movie, and it was a major studio behind it that time. I think Universal put out, Land of the Dead. So it was good that my man got his dues and got his, some spec put on his name. I can't really talk about, I can talk about how, some of the effects are, like the CG effects are bad in that movie, but on the flip side of it, it's good that they finally started like respecting him. Okay, we'll give him way more money to make this time. I just feel like like don't give me $1 trillion to make a movie. Don't give me $1 billion to make a movie because I'm blowing the earth up. I'm being on some. Y'all know how Roland Emmerich blows up every fucking thing on Earth and just leaves no crumbs behind. Then I'm gonna blow up like the galaxy in my movie if you give me $1 billion. I swear to God. And then the moment that they start critiquing it, like when they do it, when they review it and they be like, this movie sucks, he just blew up the galaxy and that was it, it's just blow up explosion, I'm gonna be like, yeah, but y'all love Michael Bay though, so shut the fuck up, man. But listen, I don't know what the financial situation is going to be here. They just said that they were looking for they said they finally in the works with the collaboration of the Romero estate and LA-based financier producer Roundtable. Now Roundtable, I don't know what their money is like. I don't know how long their money is. But if this movie ends up not having a really big budget, I feel like that may work in its favor. I feel like less is more at times, and the less money you have, the more creative you have to get with making your film. It's one of the reasons I love those independent horror films, man, because it's like, okay, what can we do with this shoestring budget? Night of the Living Dead was a very cheaply made film, but there are effects in there. The gun, the way that the wounds happen when the squibs go off. It's decent, man. It's really decent. They had more money to play with in Dawn of the Dead, but even on a budget, it's a small budget in comparison to what they probably had for Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, but they still managed to get really creative with the kills and the gore and the just the way that the zombies looked crazy, but they all were like painted blue and gray for the most part. But you did have standout zombies with prominent makeup scattered throughout the film. But then you get to Day of the Dead where every zombie looked different. There wasn't one zombie that did not look different, man. The makeup's amazing in that movie. And Land of the Dead too, man. If there's one thing I'll give all the George A. Romero zombie movies, it's the zombie effects, man. The makeup that they do to those zombies, man. It makes it stand out. This Twilight of the Dead, man, here's hoping. Here's hoping is good. Let me see if I missed anything in this article here. They just showed a picture of David Emge as Zombie Flyboy. That's They say currently there's no release window announced. Obviously, let's see. Paolo Zalati, who also worked on the treatment with Romero, finished the script with Joe Netter and Robert Lucas. Producing alongside Romero are John Baldecchi, Sarah Donnelly, Paolo Zelt, what I just said his name and I fucked it up again. Whatever. It's a bunch of motherfuckers behind it. Executive producers, all that. I hope, man. I hope that collectively these people pull it together. I really hope they do. I hope that they give this franchise the swan song that it deserves, especially after hardcore fans like me, the ones that share the same sentiment as me, were disappointed as hell with the last two. I hope that this gets a proper send-off so that we can move on to, Night of the Living Dead 2 and the Night of the Living Dead, the separate Night of the Living Dead direct sequel. And I don't know if this is still happening, but there's a Night of the Living Dead remake coming out with Vivica Fox by the same director who did like Werewolf versus Sharktopus or something, yeah, because we're all looking forward to that shit. Now, when listen, first of all, there's gonna be people out there bitching, oh, they gender swapped the main character, we're not with it. Yeah, if they gender swapped Ben, if they name her Benita or some shit like that, and is Vivica Fox, I'm like, all right, I can buy that. We've had bad remakes of Night of the Living Dead. The 1990 remake is perfect. It's fine. But then you had Night of the Living Dead 3D and Resurrection and Reanimation and all that other bullshit. So if they put Vivica Fox in there, I was like, all right, cool. But then I saw the director, and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, is Vivica Fox just here for the check? Because she's in a lot of bullshit nowadays. Nothing against her, but when I seen Vivica Fox in Sharknado, like, really trying to act, I was like, okay, baby. Like, no, I don't even give a fuck about this Night of the Living Dead remake anymore. I'll catch it for an intoxic commentary or something like that. But Twilight of the Dead, man, like I said, here's hoping, people. Here's hoping that we get a proper swan song for what the man, the myth, the goat, the legend created for us, man. It's still living on, man. It is very much a product of what George A. Romero created, man. He created the zombie genre, his zombie genre, and it's still alive and well, man. The irony, right? But people, y'all already know where to go, man. And if y'all don't, y'all can follow the podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Breaker, Radio Public, Podbean, and Podcast Addict. Shout out to Spotify for podcasters. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, Romero Tutor. Shout out to the Facebook movie group, The Cinemaniacs. And last but certainly not least, shout out to the Tutor reviewers, the listeners, the lovers, the supporters out there. Gotta wrap this one up, man, because I've got commentary that I was supposed to get to. But, like I said in my last in that Scream 7 episode, I was like, this shit completely derailed my schedule. So I definitely got to get to this commentary, man. But y'all know the love and support y'all show me, I show it back to y'all tenfold and then some. So with that being said, people, yours truly, Romero Tutor. Another episode of Tutor Reviews in the can. I'll check y'all on the next one.